Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we need to talk about failure.
Mm,
And not the fail fast, break things mantra from Silicon Valley, but that actual gut-sinking feeling of getting a test back with a big red circle at the top.
right.
Because usually when we talk about AI in schools, the conversation, it just instantly goes to the panic button.
Oh, absolutely. It's always about students using ChatGPT to write an essay.
Right. Or, to generate code for their homework. It's always framed as the student versus the system.
That is the whole narrative, and frankly, it's getting a little exhausting. It just frames this entire technology as a tool for cheating. But today, we're going to flip that script. We're
Okay.
looking at a stack of reports coming out of the Chinese ed tech sector, and they're focused on what happens when the school uses the AI.
But let's be really specific.
Yeah.
When I hear AI grading, my mind still goes to those old Scantron machines where you used to fill in a bubble. That's automation, sure, but
Yeah.
it's dumb automation.
It is. That's 90s tech. What we're looking at in these case studies is so much more complex. We are talking about AI systems that grade handwritten exam.
Handwritten.
Yeah, complex math problems, physics proofs. And the real headline here isn't that a robot is handing out grades. It's that the system is completely redefining what it even means to be wrong.
The source material really hammers this idea of a taxonomy of failure.
Mhm.
The idea that an F isn't just an F.
Mm.
But before we get there, how does it even work? If I'm a student and I handwrite a solution, what is the machine actually seeing? Is it just looking at my final answer?
No. If it were just the final answer, it'd be useless. The reports describe a system that does what they call process analysis.
Okay.
Think of it like a layer cake of data. First, yeah, it does the basic stuff, the optical recognition, reads the numbers, reads the letters, but then it looks at the stroke order.
Stroke order, why does that matter?
Well, it matters because of the timestamps. A lot of these tests are done on digital paper or tablets that record latency.
So the time between strokes.
Exactly. The AI analyzes the logical flow. It can tell the difference between a student who just blasted through an equation in 45 seconds, with confident fluid strokes,
Aye.
and another student who got the same right answer, but paused for 30 seconds between step 2 and step 3.
That's fascinating. So two students could have the exact same correct work on the page, but the system is seeing something completely different.
It's not necessarily grading them differently, but it's building a totally different cognitive profile for each one. The student who hesitated might get a flag for low fluency. The other one gets marked for mastery.
And a human teacher grading, 30 papers at 11 p.m.? They can't possibly capture that data.
No way. The human teacher is kind of a lossy data compressor.
That's a great way to put it.
They see the final output, they might scan the work, but they lose all that metadata about how the answer was built. The human teacher spots the error, the AI spots the behavior that led to it.
Okay, so that brings us to the core of this. The system doesn't just say incorrect, it categorizes the mistake.
Into one of 4 specific types. And this is where it gets really interesting for anyone who cares about learning, not just in school, but for us, for adults.
All right, let's walk through them. Because normally if I get a math problem wrong, my first thought is just, well, I'm bad at math. But this suggests there's more to it. The first one is labeled the distraction, the slip-up.
This is the most common one and the most annoying one. Let's say you're solving a quadratic equation. You set it up perfectly, you do all the factoring right, but on the very last line, you accidentally swap a negative sign for a positive.
The classic stupid mistake.
We all do it. Now, in a normal class, that's just marked wrong. You see the red ink and you think, I don't get quadratics. But the AI doesn't just look at that one test. It pulls up your knowledge graph.
Which is the student's entire history.
It's everything. The AI looks back and sees you've correctly solved 20 similar problems in the last month. The probability that you suddenly forgot how negative signs work is basically 0.
Right. But the probability you just had a little lapse in attention.
Is very high. So it classifies this as a type 1 error, distraction.
And the fix, the pedagogical action, isn't to reteach the math.
Exactly. Forcing you to watch a tutorial on negative numbers when you already know it is just. It's performative education. It's a waste of your time. Instead, the system recommends attention training or just flagging it so you review your checking process. It's a habit issue, not a skill issue.
That distinction alone must save so much time. You're not giving busy work to a kid who just needs to slow down a little.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on to type 2, the conceptual error. How does the machine tell this apart from just a slip-up?
This is where that logic analysis really comes in. Let's stick with physics. A problem asks for the potential energy of a falling object. The student uses a formula, but they use the formula for kinetic energy.
Ah, so they did the math perfectly for the wrong formula.
Exactly. They're not distracted. They're confident, but they're confidently wrong. They're navigating with a wrong map. The AI sees the internal logic is consistent, but the starting point, the core concept, is flawed.
So it flags it as type 2.
And the intervention is surgical. The teacher doesn't have to say, you need to study physics more. They can say, let's focus specifically on the difference between potential and kinetic energy.
It prevents that feeling of just being overwhelmed. I remember that from school. A bad grade felt like a verdict on the whole subject. I'm just bad at physics.
Right.
But this is saying, no, you're fine at physics. You just have these two specific wires crossed. It de-escalates the failure.
It turns a judgment into a to-do list item. Which brings us to type 3. This is the one that really should set off alarm bells. The knowledge gap.
This sounds like the death spiral scenario.
It often is.
Yeah.
This is when a student just stares at, say, a trigonometry problem and writes nothing, or just writes gibberish.
Okay.
The AI sees that blank space and realizes the student doesn't have the foundational scaffolding to even try the problem.
But how does it know why? Couldn't they have just not studied for this one test?
That's where the longitudinal data, that knowledge graph, comes in again. The system might look back and find that 3 years ago in pre-algebra, this student consistently bombed assessments on the Pythagorean theorem.
Wow.
They never actually mastered the foundation. They've just been faking it or scraping by ever since.
This is the system's recommendation is basically to go back in time.
It has to. The report calls it reconstructing the base. There's no point teaching the student trigonometry right now. It's like trying to put a roof on a house with no walls.
The system stops the current lesson plan for that one student and serves up modules from, 2 grades ago?
To plug that specific hole, yes.
That feels structurally radical. In a normal school, the class just moves on. The train leaves the station. If you miss fractions in 4th grade, well, good luck in 5th, 6th, and 7th. This system says, no, stop the train.
It breaks the synchronization of the classroom. And yes, that's a huge logistical challenge, but it might be the only way to actually solve the root problem.
Okay, so we have distraction, conceptual, and knowledge gap. But type 4 is the one that I think makes this entire deep dive worth it. Ambiguous formulation. This is where the robot turns around and judges the human.
It's the big twist. So let's say a teacher writes a history question. Explain the primary cause of the Civil War. And a student writes a really well-reasoned paragraph about economic differences. But the teacher's answer key just says slavery.
So the student gets a 0.
In a traditional classroom, probably, or at least they'd have to argue for points. But the AI looks at the class data as a whole, and it notices that maybe 40% of the class, including top-performing students, also gave the economic answer.
It sees a pattern.
A clear pattern. It sees that their logic was sound, their evidence was good, but they all missed the teacher's intended key.
So the AI concludes that it's not the students who are wrong.
Yeah.
It's the question that's bad.
Or at least ambiguous. It allowed for multiple perfectly valid interpretations. The AI flags this as a type 4 error, and the recommendation isn't for the student at all.
It's for the teacher.
It's for the teacher. Fix the question.
I can imagine some teachers not loving that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
That really shifts the power dynamic. It's basically an audit of the teacher's ability to communicate clearly.
It is, and I'm sure that's uncomfortable, but think about how fair it is. We've all taken tests with poorly worded questions. Usually, the student just has to absorb that penalty. This creates a layer of accountability for the assessment itself.
Okay, so when you put all 4 types together, you move from this one-size-fits-all factory model to what the report calls precision education. But I have to play devil's advocate here.
Please.
This sounds great in a report, but in reality, aren't you just drowning the teacher in data? Instead of just grading a test, now I have to manage 30 different personalized learning paths. That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
And that is the crucial bottleneck. If you just dump all this data on a teacher and say, good luck, yeah, you'll burn them out in a week.
So what's the solution?
The premise of this whole model is that the AI also handles the strategy of the remediation.
You mean the AI assigns the homework?
In effect, yes. The teacher becomes an educational strategist. They look at a dashboard. They see Sarah needs attention training for her type 1 errors. Mike needs to go back and relearn fractions because of a type 3 gap.
And the system just queues up the right exercises for them automatically.
Right. So the teacher's job is no longer the delivery of generic content to the middle of the room. Their job is mentorship. Their job is going over to Mike's desk and saying, hey, I see you're stuck on this. Let's work through it together.
It automates the differentiation.
Yeah.
Teachers are always told to differentiate instruction, but doing that for 30 kids it's physically impossible for one person.
It's an impossible ask for a human. It's a trivial task for a database.
There is a deeper fear here, though, and the sources even call this out with a section titled, A Message to the American Public. They anticipated this reaction, the fear of displacement. If the AI is grading, diagnosing, and assigning the work, why do we even need the teacher?
The report is very, very explicit about this. It uses a medical metaphor. It says, AI is not replacing teachers, it is giving them X-ray vision.
Okay, unpack that. Because X-rays didn't replace doctors, but they sure changed the job.
Think about a doctor in, say, the 1800s. You come in with a pain in your leg. They had to poke you, prod you, make an educated guess. They were working blind. The X-ray lets a modern doctor see the structure immediately. It's a hairline fracture right there.
So the teacher is the doctor, and the AI is the scan.
Yes. The AI provides the diagnostic clarity. This student isn't bad at math. They have a type 2 conceptual block right here. That clarity lets the teacher do the part a machine can't do, the human connection, the encouragement.
The motivation.
Exactly. A machine can tell you you're wrong. It can't make you believe you can get it right.
That's the optimistic take. But I want to push back on that process analysis for a second. The handwriting, the logic flow. Isn't there a risk of standardizing thought? What if some brilliant kid solves a problem using a totally weird, unorthodox method? Does the AI flag that as an error because it doesn't match the standard pattern?
That is a massive risk. And it's a limitation the reports do acknowledge, even if it's kind of quietly. AI models are trained on huge data sets of standard correct answers. They reward convergence.
Right.
If a student thinks divergently, if they find some elegant shortcut the training data has never seen, the system might penalize them.
The Sherlock Holmes problem. You get to the right answer, but you didn't follow police procedure.
And that is exactly why the human in the loop is completely non-negotiable here. The AI can't be the final judge. It's a flagging system. The teacher has to be able to look at that X-ray and say, hold on, the machine is wrong. This kid is a genius. They just invented a new way to do this.
So if we just blindly trust the algorithm, we risk flattening creativity into a standardized logic.
That seems to be the trade-off. Precision education is really about raising the floor. It ensures no student falls through the cracks because of a missing foundation. It ensures no student thinks they're dumb just because they make slip-ups. It brilliantly optimizes that middle 80% of the bell curve.
Let's zoom out. We've been talking about, 8th grade math, but as I'm listening to this taxonomy of failure, I'm thinking about my own team at work. I'm thinking about performance reviews.
It applies perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does. Think about the last time a project went sideways. Was it a type 1 error? Was someone just burnt out and distracted and missed a detail? Was it type 3? Did they literally not have the skills to do what you asked of them? Or was it type 4?
Did you, as the manager, give ambiguous instructions?
Exactly. We tend to just lump all workplace failures into performance issues and put someone on a PIP. But if the problem was an ambiguous prompt from me, putting my employee on a plan is, it's unjust.
And if it's a skill gap, yelling at them won't help. They need training. Adopting this vocabulary, distraction, conceptual, gap, ambiguity, it could radically change how we give feedback.
It takes the emotion out of it.
It takes the emotional weight out of you failed and replaces it with, here's the category of the error and here's the fix.
It separates the failure from the identity. You're not a failure. You just had a type 2 conceptual misalignment.
It sounds clinical, but it's actually deeply empathetic. It assumes people want to do well, and if they're not, there's a specific, fixable reason.
So I want to leave our listeners with one final thought, and it connects back to that type 4 error, the ambiguous formulation.
The one that grades the teacher.
Exactly. So if you follow this to its logical conclusion, you have an AI that scans millions of student answers. It knows exactly which phrasings are confusing. It knows where all the cognitive potholes are in our language.
It's creating a map of human misunderstanding.
Right. So does there come a point where the AI just becomes the best test designer? Not because it's smarter, but because it understands our flaws better than we do. If the goal of a test is to measure knowledge without ambiguity, maybe we reach a future where humans shouldn't be allowed to write exams anymore.
Because we're just too imprecise, too lossy.
That is a humbling thought. We might be teaching the curriculum, but the AI is the one holding the ruler because it's the only one with a hand steady enough to measure us fairly.
A cheerful thought to end on.
For any educators listening, Absolutely. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Thanks for listening.